Hi everyone, welcome. Welcome to the continuous testing meetup online. So let's start. So at first I want to say a big thank you to our sponsor, Source Lab Training and to Amusement. So they help us to organize this meetup. They paid their fees, meetup fees, but also a big thank you to Aurelian and Severin who also always join the meetup. So what else, what we have? So in September, in case you pass this meetup, so we had a great talk from Sergey Stepanov about test T. In case you missed this talk, you can find the video recording on our website, continuoustestingmeetup.com. What else, what we have? So one announcement in November. So from 21st to 24th of November this year, we have the Europe greatest agile testing conference in Germany, in Potsdam. You can join it, and I will be happy if you will join the conference. For continuous testing meetup members, we have discount codes. So if you want to attend virtually or if you want to attend on-site, please use this discount code that you see here on the screen. So make a screenshot or just contact me in case you have any questions in booking of ticket. So then let's start. So today we have Kristin. Kristin is joining us from USA and going to present today her talk about how to log a bug. So Kristin, the stage is yours.
Okay, I will share my screen. Let's see, share. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Yes. All right, well, thank you so much for inviting me today. I am really excited to be talking to you about how to log a bug. So a little bit about me before we get started. So I am a principal engineer for software testing at Paylocity, which is an HR and payroll software company. I have a blog called Think Like a Tester, which you can find at thinkingtester.com. I'm also a LinkedIn Learning course author. I've got a course called Postman Essential Training. And then finally, I am the author of the book, The Complete Software Tester, which is now available on Amazon. Okay, so why does it matter how a bug is logged? Well, if a developer can't reproduce a bug, they may close the bug without fixing it, and you have probably experienced this. If the bug doesn't have proper repro steps, then time will be wasted communicating back and forth with the tester. So for example, if you log a bug, you send it to the developer says, I don't understand what you're telling me here, then you've got to go back and forth with them to make sure that they understand what you're trying to communicate. If a developer doesn't understand the bug completely, they might wind up only fixing part of the bug. And then if a bug doesn't have good steps to reproduce, then the tester who's testing the fixed bug might not test it properly. So if tester A logs the bug and then a developer fixes it, and then it goes to tester B to test, if they don't understand how to reproduce the bug, they might not test it completely. And then if the bug is not properly documented, the team can't refer back to it at a later date if there's a regression and the bug appears again. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it has happened to me where I've seen a bug and I've said to myself, we saw this bug 6 months ago. I'm sure we did. Let me see if I can find the bug in Jira, which is our bug tracking system, and I'll search through and I'll search through, and then I can't find it. So the better you can document your bug, the more easy it is to find a bug in the event of a regression. Okay, so here are the components of a well-logged bug. So I've got 7 components here. The first 5, I would say, are mandatory. And then there are 2 optional components. So first we have the title. You want to have a clear title that says exactly what's going on so that people can search on it. You want to have a clear description so that people can tell right away what's going on. You want to have environment details so that people can reproduce the bug in the right environment. You want to have good steps to reproduce so that everyone else can find out how to make the bug happen. You want to have a good expected and actual result saying what it is that you were expecting to happen and what it is that actually happened. And then you can also optionally add additional details that might help the developer get to the bottom of the bug sooner. And then there's also, you could add a screenshot or a stack trace if that's going to be helpful. So now that we've looked at the components of a well-logged bug, we're going to look at an imaginary bug, but one that you could easily see in real life somewhere. So here's our sample bug to log. We've got a section of our app that's called Contact List, and users can add contacts to the list. They can edit them, they can delete them. So here's a typical contact information form. This is where we're going to edit the contact. We've got an existing contact, Alex P. Keaton, and he has an invalid email address. You can see right here, it says foo@bar, which is not valid. So the user is attempting to edit that contact info to maybe make the email say foo@bar.com. And so the user is going to update the email address to be that valid address, and then they're going to click the submit button. But what they're seeing is that the updated info is not saving. So that's our bug. Now we're going to go through and I'm going to show you some good and bad examples of each of the components of the well-logged bug. So first of all, the bug title. One thing that I like to do with the bug title that makes it very, very easy to search when you need to look for a bug later is I always begin with the area of the application that it is referring to. So for example, if you had like an online shopping app and you were seeing a problem with the shopping cart, you would start your bug title with shopping cart. That way everybody knows that's where the bug is happening. And then it should continue with a concise statement of the problem. So let's look at a poorly logged bug title. Contact form not saving. Okay, this is poor in a couple of ways. For one, it's not stating exactly what area of the application it's in, so it's going to be hard to search on. And also, the title is just plain wrong. The problem is not that the contact form is not saving. There's all kinds of scenarios in which the contact form is saving. It's not saving in a very specific situation. So we need to make sure that we're putting that in our title. So here's the right bug title. Contact list. So we've got that application area first, and then we've got form not saving when editing a contact with an invalid email. So very easy to see just from this one title exactly what's happening. Okay, so now let's go on to, oh, I've lost my focus, I think. There we go, description. Okay, so the description should describe the issue in one sentence. You don't want to have something really, really long because then it's going to be difficult for people to scan through and see quickly what the problem is. So a good format, one that I like to use, is when I do X and the situation is Y, then Z happens. So let's look at a badly logged description first. I can't save when I edit a contact. Okay, well, there's a few things wrong with this one. It's not giving the details, the level of detail that we need about what it is that's happening when editing a contact. And it's also just not true. There are lots of times where somebody could edit the contact and they would be able to save. It's only in this one specific instance that they can't save. You can imagine that if a developer saw this, they'd say, oh, you can't save when editing a contact? Let me try that real quick. They'd pull up any old contact. They'd make some small change like to the first or last name, and then they save. Well, their change saved, so they're not seeing a bug here. Then they close out the bug as can't repro. Okay, so this is a better description. When I am updating a contact's email address and the existing email is invalid, then I am unable to save my edit. It's a short sentence, but it's very, very clear. It's showing the important things here. You're talking about the contact's email address. You're talking about updating the email address. You're talking about the existing email has to be invalid to start off with in order to see the bug. And then the result is that you can't save. All right, let's go on to environment details. So things that you should include here are things like which environment, such as dev, QA, stage, or prod, the issue was found in, what kind of browser was used. For example, are you only seeing the issue in Safari, or are you seeing it in Chrome and Firefox as well? Also, what build was used. You want to make sure that when the developer is reproducing your issue that they're using the same build that you are, because if they're using an earlier build before the bug happened, they might not see it, or if they're using some later build, they might not see the problem. And then finally, if a mobile device was used, make sure that you're mentioning what operating system, whether you're on Android or iOS, and what model you're using. Okay. So here's a bad example of environment details: Windows. Probably a lot of companies are already using Windows laptops. And so the idea that you would see a bug on a Windows laptop would not particularly provide the developer with any details that they might need to know. So here's something better: found in the QA environment on Chrome, Firefox, and Edge using build 17.3.0. So right there, the developer knows they've got to get that build 17.3.0. They're going to point it to the QA environment, and then it doesn't really matter what browser they're using. They could use Chrome, Firefox, or Edge because you saw it on all three. All right, moving on to steps to reproduce. So you'll want to include here configuration and login information. Tell your developer who to log in as in order to see the issue. And also give them information about how to set up the test, because they might not know. But don't include common knowledge, things that everyone in your company is already going to know. But do include clearly defined procedures, step-by-step procedures that they can use to follow along. And remember, good for your testers when they're testing to make sure that the bug has been fixed. So here are a couple of bad examples of steps to reproduce. So first we have edit the contact with an invalid email address and save. Okay, there's a couple things wrong here. One is that there's no steps here. You're not giving any kind of user information. And then another thing wrong here is that the sentence itself is kind of ambiguous. Are you saying edit the contact so that it now has an invalid email address? Or are you saying edit the contact and give it, or edit the contact that already has an invalid email address and then save? It's just not completely clear. But then there's another example here that's also wrong. Step 1, navigate to contactlist.com. Step 2, click the login button. Step 3, type username 1 in the username field. Step 4, type my password in the password field. You're basically telling them how to log in. Pretty much everybody knows how to log into an application. So you don't need to say, put the username in the username field, put the password in the password field. Everyone knows how to do that. So that's a little bit too much information. So here's something better. So log into the application with username 1 and my password. You are giving the developer credentials to use that they can get in so that they're going to be able to see the bug. 2, locate or configure a contact to have an invalid email address in the database. So this is the configuration step. Now they understand they're going to need to find a contact or set up a contact that already has an invalid email address. Step 3, go to the contact list page and click on that contact to edit it. Step 4, change the email address to a valid email. Step 5, click the submit button. Step 6, return to the contact list page and notice that the change has not saved. So that's very, very clear. No one's going to look at these steps and say to themselves, oh, I'd better make a change to the first and last name. They see you're supposed to change the email address, and that's all. All right, then we have expected and actual result. Now, some might think that this is a little bit redundant. If you've already got a good description, you've already got good steps to repro. But this is very, very helpful for situations where you have very complicated business rules. So for example, if you were testing a taxation application and there were all kinds of complicated rules about, you know, in this particular area, this particular tax needs to be applied, but in this area, the tax needs to be applied, but you also subtract, a certain amount because it's this area, all kinds of complicated rules like that. Chances are when you are testing this, you know what the rules are, but 6 months from now, when the bug resurfaces and you say, oh, I seem to remember there was a problem with this, you're not going to remember what's really supposed to happen. So to have an expected result and an actual result very clearly states what behavior you were expecting from this area of the application and what behavior you got instead. So here's a poor example. Contact saved is expected, actual contact not saved. While technically this is true, it's not giving us a whole lot of detail. If someone was searching for an old bug and they were kind of scanning through and they were looking through expected and actual results, this wouldn't be giving them much information. So this is much better. Expected result. When I edit an email for a contact that has an invalid email address, the email address should update. That's what you are expecting. And then the actual result is that the update to the email is not saved. So it's not that the contact's not saved. It's not that some other area is not saved. It's that specifically the update to the email was not saved. Okay, then we've got our optional items. First, we have additional details. So what other details might be helpful to the developer? Are there situations where the action works as expected? Or maybe there are situations where the bug actually works exactly the same. So things that you might want to test here are what happens if you edit the email address and another field on the form? Or what happens if there's a bad phone number and you try to fix the bad phone number? So these are things that you could investigate. And then when you have results of those investigations, you can add those in. So here are some examples, and you can see how these are going to be very helpful to the developer. When I edit a field other than the email field and I click save, I'm prompted with an error message about the invalid email. So that's kind of interesting. Why aren't you prompted with the error message when you're fixing the email? And then if I edit the email field to have a valid email and I also edit another field, then I can save my changes. So that's kind of interesting. If you make 2 changes, then the updates go through. And finally, I do not see the issue when it is an invalid phone number rather than an invalid email. So then the developer maybe could look at how the phone number is updated and compare with how the email is updated to see where there might be some differences. Okay, and then we have our last optional item, which is screenshot or stack trace. So only include a screenshot if it will be helpful. For example, to demonstrate a rendering problem. So one example here would be I'm testing a new version of our application right now at my company, and I have noticed that occasionally our logo is showing up with the top cut off. So that would be a great time to take a screenshot and share that with people. They can see exactly what the problem is. But if the screenshot's not going to be helpful, then don't bother including it because that's just going to waste time. You taking the screenshot, you submitting it, people looking at it and saying, oh, this doesn't help me. So just leave it off. And then only include a stack trace if it's going to be helpful. For example, if it clearly describes an error, if it's going to give the developer some clues. So here are some bad examples. So here's an exception. An unknown error occurred. That is never going to help anyone ever. So please do not include that on your bug. But then also wrong, we've got a screenshot here that shows that Alex P. Keaton didn't have his email address updated. While it's true that it does show that, is that really particularly helpful? I mean, I think people are probably going to understand that an unupdated email address is going to look like that. So here's a better example of something that you might want to include. So here's a stack trace. It says error message, contact validation failed, email is invalid. And it happened at the add contact JS file on line 10, and then it got called from app.js on line 15. So that could help give some really helpful clues to the developer when they take a look at that stack trace. Okay, so now we're going to put it all together and we're going to see what this well-logged bug looks like. Okay, it's a lot of information, but it's also going to be really, really helpful. And if you are using this format over and over again, then you're going to see people are going to be, it's going to be a lot easier for people to search through things, to scan through things, to get the information they need to see if the bug they're looking for is the right bug, and so on. So we start out with our good title that lists the application area and then describes briefly what's happening. Then we've got our description, which goes into a little bit more detail and says, when I am doing this and I have this situation, then this happens. We've got our environment information. We've got our clear steps to repro. We've got our expected result and our actual result. Then we have our additional helpful details that we found that our developer is going to love us for. And then the stack trace, which is also going to be very helpful. All right, before we go on, does anybody have any questions? You can put them in the Slack chat. Okay. So now that we've seen all the different areas of a well-logged bug, we are going to, here's something. Severin says, I often include GIFs of the reproduction of the bug in the tickets. So far, I have not gotten negative feedback. Would you say that's too much? Yeah, I think it really depends. It depends on if what you're putting in there is providing value. And I would also say if nobody's complaining, then that's probably okay. And we will actually talk a little later in this presentation about having a video or a demonstration. So, all right, so now we're going to log a bug together. So here's our bug. So this is the same application. It's our contact list application area. And we've got our typical contact information form. Yep, Aurelian mentions videos. Yep, we will definitely talk about that. That's definitely something good to include if it's something very complicated or if you need to see something in action. Just this week, I was logging a couple of mobile bugs where I needed to display in action what was happening. So yeah, that's helpful too. Okay, so we've got our typical contact information form. We're going to add a new contact. And the user is attempting to add the contact info, but the user is going to be adding a postal code with a leading 0. So this is a common problem, one that I have encountered more than once, because in the United States, we have postal codes that we call zip codes that are 5-digit numbers. And in New England, where I live, our postal codes all start with a leading 0, for example, 02857. And so sometimes what happens is put in all of your information, you put in your postal code, and then when you go to save it, the leading 0 gets stripped off. It gets treated like a number and it strips off the 0. So that's what's happening here in this bug. The contact is going to be saved to the database, but the 0 on the postal code is going to get stripped off. And then the added contact is not displaying on the contact list page, probably because that postal code didn't get saved correctly. So that's our bug that we are going to log today. And we're going to do this together. I'm not going to be typing or anything, but I'm going to invite you to participate, say what you might say for each of these areas of the bug. So first, we've got the title. What would we put in the title? Okay, I'll get you started. Oh, someone go ahead. Go ahead.
Contact form, I would say, as a prefix.
Yep. So we would start off with the application area, which would be like contact list or contact form. Yep. Okay. And then how are we going to describe the situation?
Hard question.
Okay, so the issue is that when you're adding a contact and they've got a postal code with a leading 0, that's not getting saved correctly. So we might want to do something like this. Contact with a postal code with a leading 0 is saved incorrectly to the database. Okay, so now let's see if we can make a description. So let's think about that XYZ format. So when I'm doing X and Y is the situation, then Z happens. So what would be the when? When I am doing what?
Yeah, actually, when I had a postal code, when I had the postal code in the content list leading as 0, I cannot save. So that's the should be description kind of.
Yeah, so there you go. So you start out with when I'm trying to add a contact. That is the action that you're trying to do. And the situation is I've got a postal code with a leading 0. Then the thing that happens is that my contact doesn't save correctly to the database. So something like this. So when I add a contact and the contact has a postal code with a leading 0, the postal code is saved to the database with the leading 0 stripped off, and the added contact is not displayed in the contact list. So we actually sort of have two Z's, two thens that happen here, because not only is the leading 0 stripped off when it's saved to the database, but also the added contact then won't display. Okay, so for environment, since this is not actually a real bug, and since we all have different kinds of environments, I just put that one in there. So that's a given. But now we've got steps to repro. So what would be the first thing we would want to tell our developer to do?
Get to the form.
Yep, get to the form. Yeah, so maybe starting with a login, like you might want to give them a username and password to log in with, and then go to the form. Yep, okay. And then what would happen next?
Would you class those as preconditions?
You could, if you wanted to, sure.
Then I would provide a data set.
I'm sorry, what?
Then I would provide a data set and to tell them to enter those. Yeah. And then just send the form. Yeah. And verify the results.
Yep, you could do that. You could say, try entering a new contact with this information, and then you could provide them an example of a postal code that has a leading 0 on it. Yep, or you could also just say, fill out the form and put in a postal code with a leading 0. You could do that too. And then you would probably want to tell them to save. And then is there anything you would want to tell them to notice after that?
Yeah, of course, the dropping of the 0, of course, as first of our then, and then second is that is not saved. So
Yep, exactly. All right, so let's take a look right here. So we've got step 1, log into the application with username 1 and my password. 2, go to the add contact page. 3, add a contact, giving the contact a postal code with a leading 0. 4, click the submit button. And then 5, the first of the two problems, locate the contact in the database and see that the leading 0 has been stripped from the postal code. And then lastly, 6, go to the contact list page and see that the contact is not appearing on the list. Okay, and now we've got expected result and actual result. So what were we expecting?
The same zip code as we entered it, saved somewhere.
Yes, exactly. We're expecting the zip code to save just as we entered it. And what was our actual result?
The zip code without the 0.
Yep, the zip code was saved without the 0. And not only that, but it also wasn't displaying on the contact list page. So our expected result and actual results could look something like this. Expected result, the contact's postal code should be saved correctly to the database and the contact should appear on the contact list page. So 2 things we're expecting, and then 2 things that actually happened. The contact's postal code is saved to the database with the leading 0 stripped off, and the contact is not appearing on the contact list page. All right, so great job, everybody. That is a very clearly logged bug, one that a developer would easily be able to see and hopefully be able to fix. So let's go on. Got some bonus things here. Advocating for a bug fix. So it's an unfortunate reality that even if you have the most beautifully logged bug, not all of your bugs are going to get fixed. And you are definitely going to want to advocate that your bugs are getting fixed. So I have some suggestions to share with you that can help you advocate for getting those bugs fixed. So first of all, I would suggest choose your battles. Because if you fight for every single bug you ever log, developers might stop listening to you. They might start thinking that you're kind of a pain. So make sure that, like, let's say, for example, you found a bug where the save button was 2 pixels to the left of where you thought it should be. And like nobody could even really see it on the screen unless you zoomed in, and then you could see that it was 2 pixels off. Something like that you might not want to fight for, because your team might be saying to you, look, we've got deadlines, we've got a lot of important things that we need to be getting accomplished here. Moving that button 2 pixels is not going to be one of our priorities. So think about what battles you want to fight. And then think about, and well, actually, while you're choosing your battles, think about how big is the impact to the customer. Like the example of the button that's 2 pixels to the left, that's not going to impact the customer at all. But something where the customer, for example, is trying to add a new user to their contact list and they can't add it and they don't understand why, that's a big impact. And then think about how likely is it that the customer will encounter the bug. I remember working with a tester once years ago who was so excited that she found a bug, and it was basically like, well, if you go to the screen and then if you click the back button 5 times really fast, and then you pull down to redraw the screen, and then you click this button, then you see the bug. Well, who's going to do that? I mean, probably not a customer who's going to be interacting with the application in a normal way is not going to think to do the exact combination of those strange items in order to see the bug. So think about that too. What's the impact to the customer and how likely it is when you decide what battles you're going to fight for in terms of getting your bugs fixed. So then my next suggestion is to show the bug in action. And this is where those videos come in. So having a video where somebody can actually follow along, watching what's happening can be very helpful, because then they can see what the impact is. And then sometimes even more impactful than that is to invite the developer to your desk and show them the bug while you're doing it. And so you can do this if you actually work in the same location with your developer, or if you work in different locations, you can virtually have a meeting where you're sharing your screen and you're showing them the bug as you're going through it. And then even more impactful than that is to go to the developer's desk and have them go through the steps to reproduce the bug. And so you can do this in person, or if virtual, you could say to the developer, share your screen, I'm going to talk you through what to do, and then have them see exactly what happens when they are doing the steps. So all of those things can really provide a lot of impact to show, oh, this is a bigger deal maybe than I thought it was. So similarly, you can also walk through the user's experience. And oh yes, Joshua says actually going to talk with developers is an excellent approach to things. Yes, I love talking with developers. It's very helpful for both of us. So when you walk through the user's experience, what you want to do is find a typical user journey for your product. So something that a real user would be doing, a real customer, and then walk the team exactly through what the user might be experiencing. And then describe what the user might be thinking and feeling when they encounter the bug. So getting back to that bug that we just logged together with the 0 being stripped from the postal code, I was an actual user. I was trying to create a login for a financial application that I wanted to use. I was going to be putting some money in this financial application. And so I knew I needed to create a user account. So I put in all of my information and I went to click save and nothing happened, nothing at all. And I tried again and again. And I thought to myself, surely this cannot be because I have a postal code with a leading 0 in it. And it turned out after I contacted customer support, that's exactly what the problem was. So I could definitely feel that user's pain because I was the user in that case, where I could say to them, you know, here I am, I'm trying to make an account as a user. I'm going to be giving you my money, but if I can't trust you to keep my leading 0 in so that I can like actually create an account, should I really be trusting you with my money? So think about those kinds of things. Talk about what the user might be thinking when they're encountering the problem. And then look at customer feedback for similar issues. See if there's been a problem like this before. See if you've gotten a lot of customer feedback. See how irritated people are, and then find the most frustrated customer complaints you can and share it with the team. At my company, there is a bug that we thought was fixed and recently came back. One of the things that we can do in our application is all of our customers can enter their time worked for the week. And so they go to their timesheet, and what's supposed to happen when you go to the timesheet on mobile is it's supposed to load up with this week, because that would be where you would want to enter your time. But right now it's opening up from like 6 weeks ago. Well, that is not very helpful at all. I know it's very frustrating for me because I actually use the app as an employee. And so there was a customer complaint that was in all caps that said, for the love of Mike, please fix the opening. When you open the timesheet, please make it go to the current week. I am so tired of having to scroll through all the weeks to get to the right week. So find that frustrated customer complaint and share it with the team so that they can see this is the kind of anger you're going to get if this similar bug gets out and people see it. And then finally, look at the impact to the team. So think about what's in it for me, because a lot of times teams are thinking about, well, how is it really going to impact them? Maybe, you know, the customer should be important, but sometimes if you're rushing for a deadline or whatever, you might not be thinking about the customer, but certainly people will understand if it impacts them as a team. So first of all, you can point out the impact to data quality as a result of the bug. We had a situation at my company where we had thousands and thousands of awful phone number entries that did not even remotely follow what a phone number should be formatting as, including there were things like dad's work phone, which isn't even a phone number at all. And when you've got poor data quality like that, it makes it really hard to serve up that data in a nice looking way when you put it in your UI. So point that out. You know, if we can't, if we've got a bunch of leading 0s to fix, that's really going to slow us down. Point out the likelihood of getting paged after hours as a result of the bug. If it's a bug that's important and the customer can't do something important, they're going to call customer support. And if it's 2 o'clock in the morning for you, you might get paged, and that's going to be a big pain for you. So wouldn't it be better to fix it now before that happens? And then point out the potential of C-level executives hearing about the bug. So I know I have worked for startups where the CEO of the company will really love to take that app out and show it to everybody when they're doing their networking or when they're looking for more funding. And so here they are, they're demonstrating the bug to everybody, or they're demonstrating the feature to everybody, and then a bug pops up. That looks really embarrassing to them. Or if they're networking and somebody comes up to them and says, I really love your app, but there's this bug that I keep on encountering. that's really embarrassing too. And so what's going to happen is when that CEO is embarrassed, that CEO is going to come back to your team and they're going to say, why didn't you fix this bug? Did you know about this bug? Did you find this bug? Why didn't you do anything about it? So that can be another way to convince your team to fix a bug. All right, and that is all I have for you today. So does anybody have any questions about logging bugs or getting them fixed?
I was going to ask if you have used like any particular tools in terms of like creating, you know, rather than doing them on Jira or something like, you know, an Atlassian kind of like tool. Is there any other tools that you could recommend in the sense of what we could use?
For bug tracking software, I've used Jira for so long now. There was, I think at one of my very first testing jobs, we used something called DevTrack. Okay. I don't know if that even exists. And actually at a previous job, we used Bugzilla, I think, which may still exist. I personally, I'm comfortable with Jira. It kind of tends to be what everybody's familiar with. But I think the really important thing is just to make sure to include those components in some way. I know that Jira can be configurable in all kinds of ways. And sometimes when Jira gets over configured, it's kind of hard to use. So I guess I would also say when choosing a tool to track bugs, I would make sure that you're choosing something that's fairly easy to use. And I'm a big fan of just being able to type freely rather than having to put all of my information into a specific area, because then that way it makes it more flexible.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
How do you handle bugs, or how do you document bugs where you cannot yet find out what the reproduction is? Is it still good to just keep it in the system somehow, even if there is basically no body yet for the ticket?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's like those bugs that are hard to reproduce. So oftentimes, this is my personal formula. If I see a bug once and then I try several times and I can't reproduce it at all, usually I don't log it. I might make a note someplace in my own testing, because sometimes when I'm testing, I'll create a test plan that's like in a wiki page. And so I might put a note, I saw this, but I couldn't repro it. But if I see something twice, then I've determined it's a bug. And so then what I do is I try to investigate to see if I can reproduce it. And some of the things that I look at are like, is it possible that maybe there's some kind of a race condition where if something happens too soon, then something else happens before it's supposed to. So I might try to reproduce it by clicking a button really, really fast, or using a device that I know is faster than the one I was just testing on. And then I also look at things like the operating system, look at things like different users, like was there a specific user that I saw the issue with? I have a pretty cool blog post about this that if I'll try to maybe post in the meetup chat or something afterwards. I'll have to find it first, but there's a whole bunch of different ideas about how to repro that bug. And then even if you can't repro the bug, you could still log it and say, this is an intermittent problem. I've only seen it twice, and then just put in as much information as you can about what the circumstances were when you saw it. And then even if a developer can't reproduce it, it's still there in the system. And if somebody else sees it again later, they can pick that bug up and then add more information.
Thank you. Great answer.
Okay, other questions?
I have also one question. Do you use boss fields, priority and severity for your bugs?
I don't. And I haven't done that in years. I'm trying to think if there are even, I think there are teams at my company that do that, but none of the teams I've been on at my company have done that. One thing that I find extremely helpful is having triage, bug triage, where the team gets together, they go through all of the recently logged bugs, and they decide together which ones are going to be prioritized for a fix, which ones maybe we'll leave on the backlog if we have time, and which ones we might never fix. And that's also a really great place for you to advocate for whether or not you think something should be fixed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, what else can I answer for you? All right, well, that is all I have for you then today. You can feel free, if you think of more questions that you'd like to ask me about, you can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And then there's my book, The Complete Software Tester, that talks about stuff like this and a whole bunch of other things too. And then I've also got that Postman course, which is on LinkedIn Learning. And then you can also go to my website, thinkingtester.com, where you can read my blog. All right, thanks. Stop sharing.
So thank you very much, Kristin. So then I will share my screen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
Plus, I follow your LinkedIn learning stuff.
Oh, great.
So I just realized it was you, but it was like a year ago. Just trying to understand how Postman was supposed to work. So yeah, great job.
Oh, great. Well, I'm so glad you liked that.
So thank you very much for this really interesting topic and this interaction part especially. I think it was really interesting for everyone here. So then let's do the wrap up of the session. So what else do we have? So the video recording of this session you can find in our website, continuoustesting.meetup.com. I think we can upload it next week. So just check our website, you will find everything there. And what's coming next? So in November 17, we have the next meetup session with James Mortensen. He will explain us about testing the cloud for free. So I will be happy to see you there. So thank you very much. Have a nice day. Have a nice morning, evening, afternoon, depends on where you are. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for